Coming up on Market to Market, the nation receives a wintry wake-up call from Mother Nature. And the ups and downs of 2015, from farm fields to the halls of Congress. Those stories and market analysis with Tomm Pfitzenmaier next.
Funding for Market to Market is provided by Grinnell Mutual. You think differently about a customer when you stand in the middle of his dreams. We work to make sure you get covered right. Grinnell Mutual, a policy of working together. Information on finding an agent near you is available at grinnellmutual.com. This is the Friday, January 1 edition of Market to Market, the weekly journal of rural America.
Hello, I'm Mike Pearson. The new year is already bringing out economic prognosticators predicting how the Santa Claus bounce will play with the January effect. One economist even said consumers have regained their swagger. According to the Conference Board, the Consumer Confidence Index rose 4% last month to 96.5, reflecting positive views of the economy and job market. Despite the positive sentiment, 5,400 DuPont employees will be let go over the next year as the merger of agricultural giants Dow and DuPont moves forward. No word yet on cuts to the ranks at Dow. Oil prices remained under $40 per barrel for the fourth straight week. Crude has lost more than 40% of its value in the last 7 months. Those low prices are fueling a housing slump in oil states like North Dakota and Texas, where home sales have fallen 10% in some regions. And AAA reports the national average price for gasoline hit $2 per gallon. However, more than half the nation is filling up for less than $1.99. Many oil states, along with the rest of the nation, received a heavy dose of Mother Nature's post-holiday wrath. Flooding closed a stretch of the Mississippi River near St. Louis, halting barge traffic, while Oklahoma received a double whammy of heavy rains and an earthquake. It was an all-hands-on-deck response as sandbags and snow shovels were taken out of storage. Mother Nature brought a plethora of unwelcome gifts to the holiday weekend for most of the country, as everything from flooding to wildfires wreaked havoc across the U.S. this week. Severe storms were part of a weather system that brought heavy snow, massive flooding, and high winds and tornadoes across the nation. The spring-like storms mixed with unseasonably warm weather to produce tornadoes from the south-central U.S. all the way to the Great Lakes. In Texas, 11 people were killed and dozens of homes destroyed as twisters plowed through Garland and Dallas. Local officials estimated nearly 1,450 homes fell victim to at least 9 tornadoes. As the storm crushed sections of Texas, it was simultaneously punishing parts of Oklahoma with heavy snow, leaving hundreds of thousands of people without power and destroying multiple homes. Further north, the Show Me State declared a state of emergency as floodwaters reached historic levels. Police in southern Missouri are holding the waters accountable for derailing a Burlington Northern freight train. In the Midwest, strong storms mixed ice and sleet with plenty of snow to make traveling treacherous for those trying to get home from the holiday weekend. An estimated 2,800 flights were canceled in Chicago as the land of Lincoln battled a wintry mix to the north and flooding to the south. And as the winter storm continued its march to the northeast, a mix of heavy snow, ice, and blustery winds in parts of the New England states made traveling hectic. The death toll from this weather system has climbed past 40, and officials expect that number to rise. In the West, high winds were blamed for the creation of a 1,200-acre wildfire in Southern California. Officials said about 600 firefighters, along with water-hauling helicopters, overcame high winds and steep terrain to stop the fire from spreading. Authorities are now concerned with the possibility of landslides if the El Niño-sponsored rain soaks the newly charred hills. As rural America received its mix of wind and weather, Wall Street topped off a wild year of its own. Last August, the market fell 1,000 points at the opening bell, finishing the day below 15,700 points. On Thursday, the market ended the year closer to 17,500 points. The past year was full of economics, both rural and Wall Street, policy, both foreign and domestic, and weather, both dry and stormy. If all politics are local, then these stories impacted ranchers and producers in some form or fashion over the past year. Paul Yeager takes a look back at the year that was.
This pipeline could already be a zombie pipeline, dead man walking.
The Keystone Pipeline was built as a way to move oil from the tar sands of Canada to the Gulf of Mexico.
Hearing none, the ayes are 62, the nays are 36. Senate Bill 1, as amended, is passed.
Even with Senate approval to authorize construction, the plan was vetoed by President Obama in February. The president would snuff any last hope for the pipeline in November after years of delay.
While our politics have been consumed by a debate over whether or not this pipeline would create jobs and lower gas prices, we've gone ahead and created jobs and lowered gas prices.
Although not directly tied to lower prices for crude oil, the late-year drop below $2 for gasoline was the lowest at the pumps since 2009. Crude oil would teeter under $40 for much of December, 18 months removed from the $100 per barrel price. In November, the United States had the most oil in reserves since 1972. Coupled with OPEC continuing to flood the market with product, oil-producing states of North Dakota and Oklahoma face a dire start to the new year, even with the help of the federal government opening the doors for black gold exports. Economists in Middle America cited a stronger U.S. dollar and lower oil prices were limiting imminent economic optimism.
The manufacturing sector either linked to agriculture, energy, or exports, or in some cases, two of the three. Those areas are having a real tough time of it.
Some producers look to new trade agreements to bolster foreign demand. The passage of the Trans-Pacific Partnership by several countries is still without U.S. approval. Congress has yet to decide if boosting trade is worth the potential loss of jobs that move overseas. Another world meeting aimed to change culture, or in this case, climate. A deal between 195 nations was reached at the United Nations Climate Change Summit held in Paris. The landmark accord vows to lower greenhouse gas emissions as a way to stave off drastic climate change effects. India's Prime Minister continued his claim the problem isn't solely the fault of the third largest emitter of greenhouse gases.
We have to ensure, in the spirit of climate justice, that the life of a few does not crowd out the opportunities for the many still on the initial steps of the development ladder.
Winter brought snow in the normal and non-traditional locations, like a foot of snow in Alabama, breaking records set in the 1890s. California's drought drug on for a fourth season, again crippling a region and racking up at least $3 billion in damages. Congress held hearings to see what assistance could help and what options were viable.
Water conservation is not going to create a new supply for a new demand, but it certainly can lead to saving water, be able to putting that in storage, maintaining flexibility in the situation.
As further conservation plans were implemented, tough choices were made across the Golden State.
This year, for the first time, growers within Merced Irrigation District will get no water from Lake McClure. Their only water that they will have access to is groundwater. Some of our growers have private wells that they'll be able to use, and some of our growers are in areas that they can get access to MID's wells, where we're going to be pumping a minimal amount of groundwater, but it's a mere fraction of what they would depend on typically from this lake.
Water has long been a contentious issue in California as rural and urban interests collided over the precious resource. Mandatory reductions were experienced by 77,000 farmers and 38.5 million residents, sparking water rights battles and even the dusting off of old technology in an attempt to find new water.
We know this drought will end one day. Mother Nature's not telling us when, but it will. And we know on a future date we'll have another drought. And the question is there a role for desalinated water during the interim?
Graham Gillette.
Aye.
Susan Huppert. Aye. Mark Wallace.
And a case of what's in the water had many in the Corn Belt put on notice.
We're very confident that these are clear point source groundwater polluters that are coming from agricultural use.
The water plant in Iowa's largest city sued 3 northwest Iowa counties upstream over pollution from agricultural runoff. The Des Moines Waterworks suit survived one legal challenge and is being watched all over the United States to see if this litigation sets precedent. Meanwhile, the Waters of the United States rule was upheld by a court of appeals, further defining what bodies of water are under federal regulator jurisdiction.
Our goal in this rule is very straightforward. It's to respond to requests from stakeholders across the country to make the process of identifying waters protected under the Clean Water Act easier to understand.
What was hard for some federal officials to grasp early this spring was how H5N2, or avian flu, was spreading from farm to farm and causing $3 billion in lost revenue. The deadly bird flu slammed turkey and chicken producers in 15 states. More than 48 million birds died from the virus or were euthanized in an attempt to curtail its spread. Barns on infected farms were emptied and fallowed for months. Producers had to wait for the green light to get back into the poultry business.
So we are excited to be back in the turkey industry today, and I would say there's 3 words that describe how we feel on this farm moving forward. We're excited, we're encouraged, and we're optimistic.
Any one of these stories could be a headline maker again in 2016, but we'll have to wait and see. For Market to Market, I'm Paul Yeager.
Next, the Market to Market Report.
New Year's celebrations made for another short week in the commodity markets. The markets capped the season with mixed finishes for livestock and grains. For the holiday shortened week, March wheat gained 2 cents and the nearby corn contract declined 6 cents. Low prices and improving weather in South America pushed against the nearby soybean contract as March beans lost 9 cents. March meal followed along, falling $5.40 per ton. In the softs, March cotton fell 38 cents per hundred. Over in the dairy parlor, February Class 3 milk futures improved 35 cents. The livestock sector finished the year mixed, with February cattle losing 23 cents, March feeders gaining $3.52, and the February lean hog contract moving $1.50 higher. In the currency markets, the U.S. dollar index continued to strengthen, gaining 0.7%. February crude lost $1.06 per barrel. COMEX gold declined $15.70 per ounce, and the Goldman Sachs Commodity Index fell more than 2 points to settle at 312.30. Here now to lend us his insight on these and other trends is one of our regular market analysts, Tomm Pfitzenmaier. Tom, welcome back.
Yeah, thanks, Mike.
We're glad to have you here. It's the end of the year. We've been watching this wheat market just plug along. It's nothing too exciting, but it's holding up given these huge global supplies. This week, 2.5 cents higher. What does the first quarter for U.S. wheat trade look like?
Well, we had a little bounce this week on wheat because of this fear of flooding down in that flood you're talking about down around St. Louis. I don't think, I mean, world stocks are huge on wheat, and we've got some resistance on March wheat at 380. That's where I'd probably make my first round of sales. If you can bust up through that, maybe it'll overreact a bit and take a run at 4. It certainly would be even more aggressive if we got there. Without some problem someplace, and there's not that much that can happen here in the first quarter, I think that's about all you can expect out of the wheat market.
Now, the dollar index has been one of the strength of the U.S. dollar has been a major drag on this market. What's your thoughts on where this dollar may be headed? We seem to have found a little bit of a happy spot in here for the past few weeks. Are we marching higher through 2016?
Absolutely, we are. I mean, the Fed's and most analysts already expect that the Fed's going to do some kind of a regular increase, whether that's quarterly or whatever, but U.S. interest rates are probably going to inch higher. And I don't think anybody thinks that everybody else's commodities aren't going to work lower. And all that means is the dollar is going to continue to see strength. Now, you know, how high that is, I don't know. And you're right, we have sort of consolidated and we're bouncing around here between 98 and maybe 99, possibly up to 100. But I think eventually you're going to take out 100 and move up higher from that. And that's going to be, again, another negative for the whole commodity complex.
And if that should start to happen, we know the Fed has raised rates. We can anticipate, as they've done historically, regular rate increases.
Right.
What's the downside risk in this wheat market? Or put another way, should producers be hedging out fairly long-term, 1, 2, 3 years of production if we get a bounce?
I guess, if we get a bounce, I think there's probably a fairly good possibility that we're going to put some kind of weather market in these weather premium, into these grain markets going into the spring, where that's March, April, May, some March, April probably. And I guess that's the rally I would use to maybe go out and see if you can't lock in something a little longer term on the wheat market.
Okay.
And then you've got this big, I don't know, confusion, I guess you'd say, or uncertainty about whether this El Nino, how long it's going to last, whether it's going to turn into a La Nina, whether it's going to just go back to normal weather, or what's going to happen. And the fear of all that is probably another thing that could drive prices up a little bit.
Uncertainty can add a premium
Sure.
at times. Well, now, as we look into this corn market, we've got a situation where a lot of U.S. farmers are still sitting on a huge amount of old crop corn, and as far as I'm aware, haven't made very many aggressive sales on the new crop. So let's talk this old crop that's in the bins. How do you market that effectively coming into January 1st with March corn at just north of $3.50?
Well, for 3 months now, we've been hammering on people to at least take it. If you think the price is terrible, at least take advantage of this better than expected basis. Everybody's built bins. They're all excited about having this bin that they're going to use for their marketing. Well, that bin has given you opportunities over the last 3 months, because there are end users that have needed corn and have popped bids all over the place to try and get those. Now, if you put yourself out and say, I've got corn I'm willing to sell to you on that better basis, there have been opportunities for your bin to make you some pretty darn good money. If you're using that dumb bin to just sit in there and not make a marketing decision, it's an enemy. So in terms of what to do with old crop, number one, get that basis locked in as fast as you can. And those good basis levels are lingering. They're going to linger probably into the second or third week of January, I would guess. So that opportunity hasn't passed us by. And then I guess you're going to have to make a decision about how low you're willing to sell it, or how committed you are to holding out for a spring or summer rally.
Okay, and now you talked about basis, which has been a really, really interesting factor this entire fourth quarter.
Yeah.
We've got a question here from one of our followers on Twitter. This is Roger Cooper, and he's asking, how will the grain markets react to recent river flooding, given that the Ohio River Valley has been the scene of many of those strong basis levels? What do you anticipate with this high river in December?
It hasn't hardly reacted at all. Now, I think you're going to see, again, isolated basis opportunities because of that. The problem is it happened at kind of an odd time of the year, where the rivers are starting to shut down a little bit anyway. So I don't see it having, if this happens in May or June or July, when there's a lot of barge traffic, a lot of product moving out down the rivers, that's a different story. When you're in the process of shutting the river down, I'm not sure it's that big a factor.
Probably a bigger impact on freight rates on rail than on basis?
Probably, yeah.
Okay. Now, new crop corn, where should producers be looking to put some hedges on or forward contract?
I think you have to look at December corn in that. I mean, we're just above 380 now, but I think you've got a chance of putting that contract, December of 16 contract, up into 410 to You know, if it really get excited, maybe 440, but it's some kind of a scale-up program.
Okay.
From those levels, if you're more optimistic than that, maybe you start buying yourself $4 puts and look for some place to kind of offset that by selling higher price calls. But
all right. Now let's jump into the soybean market. Same question. Still a lot of beans in storage. How do you handle that old crop bean?
You're really running into problems with beans because we're about 45 to 60 days away from all this pretty decent export business going to South America, and we're already 11% behind a year ago on export sales. So, and if you notice this week, export sales came in at half to less than a half of what the trade expectation was. China's been absent from the market for over a week now. So it makes you wonder if they aren't starting to sniff around for that South American product, which is being offered cheaper than ours. Argentine corn is almost 30 cents under our corn. Again, you get little 20, 30 cent rallies because the market's oversold, and the bean market is oversold. And you know as well as I do, beans can rally 30, 40, 50 cents just for no reason except the funds are too short and they decide to take some profits and pop it up. So I think you use little rallies like that and don't take that as a way to get yourself all bulled up. Take it as an opportunity to get cleaned up a little bit on old crop.
All right, new crop. Same story, wait for those sales on the Novi contract?
Yeah, I think so. You start getting above 9, very far above $9, 9.25 maybe, then I think you have to start some kind of a scale-up program there and hope that the scaling up isn't just one sale. You hope that it goes higher to keep making sales.
All right. Now let's jump down, try to find some good news here on this week before the end of the year, and we've still seen it continue in the livestock market. Let's talk about live cattle. Let's talk about where this consumer, this choice box, select box beef values are. We're seeing a lot of strength out there. Is that going to continue?
I don't believe so. I mean, you've put, what, $20 on cattle in 9 days or something. I mean, the odds of sustaining that probably aren't great. You get April cattle up in that 138 to 140 range, you better be finding some way to get some cattle sold. I had to smile a little bit. A lot of this optimism has come from that cattle on feed report where it showed lower placements. And everybody's like, oh, lower placements, they're all excited. Well, there's two reasons for that. One is the feedlots are scared to death to put cattle on feed because they've gotten fried so badly the last few months. And the cow-calf guy has seen the feeder market drop, and so they're starting to kind of, pastures are good, they can put them back on feed and see what happens. So I think there's some things going on there besides just, well, there aren't any cattle around, so they didn't put any on place any.
Sure.
The weights have cleaned up, and that's a good thing. I guess I'm still not certain that things have improved all that much on a retail level. Pork and poultry is still quite a bit cheaper. And I know there's an argument that, well, the consumer has gotten used to these high beef prices, and so the retailer is going to keep those high margins and press that as long as they can, and I understand that, but it's not going to be great for overall beef demand.
Sure.
Now, I mean, we tend to have weather rallies, and part of what happened here over the last 2 weeks was weather related too, with muddy lots and all that stuff. But I just don't see it.
That 138, 140 levels of an exit strategy.
Yeah, all of a sudden we're wildly overbought on cattle, so you know, I don't get yourself too excited up here.
Okay. Now, do you see the same story playing out in this feeder cattle market? Same rally.
Yeah, same rally. I guess if corn continues to work lower, meal's probably going to continue to work lower. DDGs are probably going to work lower, so that's going to tend to be supportive of the feeder market. But if the fat market tops out, I don't see the feeders going a whole lot more either.
Do you have a price level in mind where you'd start to lock in some feeder sales?
Yeah, I guess if we got $3 to $5 higher than where we're at now, and that would be a stretch for me because I really don't think there's more than $1 or $2.
Oh, really? So that 165, you don't think 170 is in the cards?
Possible. That would be on the top side.
Okay. Okay.
Somewhere in that 165 to 170 range.
Now, given that this has been a historic year for cattle, both with highs and then with record breaks, how far out would you be willing to lock in prices for both fat and feeder cattle?
As far as you can stand it. I mean, I think we talked about it the last time I was on. Cattle have a 10-year cycle, and that's topped out. And so when that tops out, your overall trend is going to be down in cattle. Certainly you're going to have pops like we saw the last 9 days, and that's always going to happen. But overall, the trend's going to be down, and if you can sell on a high market in a downtrending pattern, that to me is the thing to do.
All right. Well, now let's look at the pork market. Right close to $60, the way we closed the week this week. This lean hog, we still going to continue to work higher?
A little bit. I think you could see those summer months up in that. They're around 78. I think you could see them hit 80, and I'd probably. Not probably, I would be a seller up in those levels too.
Okay, just all the supply out there.
Yeah, there's a ton of supply, and I understand the demand's pretty good. But again, the dollar's going to I think it's going to continue to work higher, and that's going to hurt exports on both beef and pork. So yeah, we've had a nice bounce off the lows on the pork side, and I guess I would use that as a selling opportunity too.
All right, now Tom, do you see crude oil moving back over $40 in the first quarter?
No, there's too much of it around. You got Iran's getting ready to ramp up their production. U.S. inventories are phenomenally huge. Cushing, Oklahoma was up again this week in their inventory, where a lot of that WTI delivery point is. The rig counts are down, but production's not hardly down at all.
So it's just bearish.
There's just a lot of product sitting around, and that's going to hurt the energy component of corn and beans too. I mean,
bet.
That's huge competition there.
And we'll talk about that in the Market Plus segment online. Thanks for joining us, Tom.
Thanks, Mike.
That wraps up this edition of the broadcast portion of Market to Market. But Tom and I, as I mentioned, will continue our discussion and answer some of your questions in the Market Plus segment available on our website. You can check out links to our social media channels when you arrive. And we encourage you to email us with comments at markettomarket@iptv.org. And join us again next time when we'll examine how two brothers turned an FFA project into a money-making enterprise. So until then, thanks for watching. I'm Mike Pearson. Happy New Year and have a great week.
Market to Market is a production of Iowa Public Television, which is solely responsible for its content. Funding for Market to Market is provided by Grinnell Mutual. You think differently about a customer when you stand in the middle of his dreams. We work to make sure you get covered right. Grinnell Mutual, a policy of working together. Information on finding an agent near you is available at grinnellmutual.com.